The smoke from the burning wagon cast an eerie glow against the darkening New Mexico sky, as Sophia and Sarah Garland watched their hopes for a new life crumble into ashes. It was June 1878, and the unforgiving desert stretched endlessly around them, promising nothing but a slow death to two city girls from Boston who had never faced such peril. "What are we going to do now?" Sarah, the younger of the two at 19, clutched her sister's arm. Her golden hair, normally kept in neat braids, fell in tangled waves around her tear-streaked face. "Everything we owned was in that wagon." Sophia, 23 and with a determined set to her jaw despite their circumstances, wrapped a protective arm around her sister. "We'll figure something out." "We always do." But even as she spoke the words, she scanned the empty horizon with growing dread. Their driver and guide had abandoned them 2 days earlier, claiming he'd scout ahead. They hadn't seen him since, and now their wagon catching fire while they'd been gathering what little water they could find from a nearby spring. The sun was sinking fast, and with it went the desert heat that had beaten down upon them all day. Soon the bitter cold of the night would set in. They had no blankets, no food, and only a single canteen of water between them. "I think I see something," Sarah said suddenly, pointing toward a dust cloud in the distance. "Get behind that rock," Sophia ordered, pulling her sister toward the meager shelter. "We don't know who that might be." They huddled together, watching as the figure on horseback grew larger. As it approached, they could see it was a man tall and broad-shouldered, sitting easily in his saddle like he'd been born there. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, but there was no mistaking the gun at his hip. "Stay here," Sophia whispered, reaching for the small derringer their father had insisted she carry. It was little protection, but it was all they had. "Hello." The man called out, pulling his horse to a stop several yards from the still smoldering wagon. "Anybody out here?" His voice carried across the empty landscape, deep but not threatening. Still, Sophia hesitated. The West had taught her caution in the few short weeks they'd been traveling. "I can see your tracks, madam," he called again. "I mean no harm. Looks like you could use some help." Gathering her courage, Sophia stepped out from behind the rock, keeping the small pistol hidden in the folds of her skirt. "Our wagon caught fire," she said, striving to keep her voice steady. "We've lost everything." The man dismounted in one fluid motion, and Sophia got her first clear look at him. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps in his late 20s, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes as blue as the New Mexico sky. A few days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw, but his gaze was direct and clear as he took in their situation. "Isaac Hawkins," he introduced himself with a slight tip of his hat. "I've got a ranch about 5 miles from here." "Sophia Garland," she replied, "and this is my sister Sarah." At her name, Sarah emerged cautiously from behind the rock. Isaac Hawkins surveyed the remains of their wagon, then looked back at the two women with their city clothes and frightened eyes. "You ladies are a long way from anywhere safe. Where were you headed?" "Las Lunas," Sarah said before Sophia could stop her. "Our uncle sent for us after our parents died." Isaac's expression softened. "Las Lunas is still a good 30 miles south of here, and not much between here and there except trouble." He glanced at the darkening sky. "Night's coming." "You can't stay out here." "We don't have much choice," Sophia said stiffly, pride making her voice sharper than intended. Isaac looked at them both for a long moment, seeming to come to a decision. "My ranch isn't much, but there's food, water, and shelter. You're welcome there until you can send word to your uncle or make other arrangements." Sophia hesitated, weighing their options. The derringer in her hand would be little protection against whatever dangers the night might bring, and Sarah was already shivering despite the lingering heat. "We accept your kind offer, Mr. Hawkins," she finally said, ignoring the relief that flooded her sister's face. "Call me Isaac," he said, moving toward his horse. "We'd best get moving before it's full dark. The coyotes get mighty curious after sundown." Within minutes, he had helped Sarah onto his horse and instructed Sophia to climb up behind her sister. He took the reins and began leading them across the desert landscape, walking beside the horse with long, sure strides. "What about the wagon?" Sarah asked, looking back at the smoldering remains. Nothing worth salvaging, Isaac replied. How did it catch fire anyway? We're not entirely sure, Sophia admitted. We went to collect water and when we returned. She trailed off, the memory still fresh and frightening. Strange, he commented, but didn't press further. As they traveled, the desert gradually gave way to more varied terrain, scrub brush, the occasional juniper tree, and finally, evidence of human habitation. A rough fence line appeared, and beyond it, cattle could be seen grazing in the twilight. Hawkins Ranch, Isaac announced as they crested a small rise. Below them sprawled a modest homestead, a main house built of adobe and wood, a barn, corral, and several outbuildings. It wasn't grand, but to the exhausted sisters it looked like salvation. As they approached, a dog began barking, alerting the household to their arrival. An older man emerged from one of the outbuildings, rifle at the ready until he recognized Isaac. "Vicent," Isaac called out, "we have guests." The man, clearly Mexican by his features, lowered his rifle and nodded. "I see this, patron. I will tell Alina to prepare food." By the time they reached the main house, a woman who appeared to be in her 50s had come to the door. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, and her face was lined with years of hard work and desert sun, but her eyes were kind as she took in the bedraggled sisters. "Alina, these ladies need our help," Isaac explained as he helped first Sarah, then Sophia down from the horse. Their wagon burned out near Peterson's Crossing. "Miss Sophia and Miss Sarah Garland, Dios mio," Alina murmured, stepping forward to take Sarah's arm. Come inside, you must be exhausted." Isaac handed the reins of his horse to Vicent and followed the women inside. The interior of the house was simple but clean, a main room with a fireplace, a wooden table with chairs, and doorways leading to what Sophia presumed were bedrooms. "Alina will show you where you can clean up," Isaac said. "I'll have Vicent bring some water for washing. There's plenty of food and you can stay in the spare room tonight." He paused, seeming suddenly aware of the impropriety of their situation. "I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be safe here." Sophia met his gaze directly. "Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, Isaac. We're grateful for your hospitality." After he left, Alina showed them to a small but tidy bedroom with a single bed. "You will have to share," she said apologetically. "We're used to it," Sarah assured her with the first smile Sophia had seen on her face since the wagon burned. "We shared a room back home in Boston, too." Alina brought them clean water, soap, and towels. "I will find some clothes," she promised. "They will not be fancy, but they will be clean." When the older woman had gone, Sophia finally allowed herself to sink onto the edge of the bed. "What do you make of all this?" she asked her sister in a low voice. Sarah was already washing her face. "I think we're incredibly fortunate. Mr. Hawkins seems like a decent man and we would have died out there tonight." "Perhaps," Sophia conceded, "but we know nothing about him." "And men out here." She trailed off, remembering warnings they'd received before leaving Boston. "He could have left us there if he had bad intentions," Sarah pointed out reasonably, "or worse. Instead, he's given us shelter and promised to help us reach Uncle George." Before Sophia could respond, there was a knock at the door. Alina had returned with simple cotton dresses, faded but clean. "These belonged to Isaac's sister before she married and moved to Santa Fe," she explained. "She was small like you." "I didn't realize Mr. Hawkins had a sister," Sophia said, accepting the clothes gratefully. "Isabel," Alina nodded. "She is 5 years gone now, married to a merchant. Isaac, he lives here alone except for Vicent and me." She hesitated, then added, "He is a good man, señorita. You and your sister are safe here." After Alina left, the sisters changed quickly into the borrowed clothes. The dresses were simple, one blue, one brown, but they were blessedly clean compared to their travel-stained garments. "I still have Father's watch," Sarah said, pulling the gold timepiece from her pocket. "It was the only valuable they had saved from the wagon. And you have Mother's locket. We're not completely destitute." Sophia touched the gold locket at her throat. "We're a long way from home with nothing but the clothes on our backs and 2 small keepsakes. I'd say that's fairly close to destitute." "But alive," Sarah insisted. "And Uncle George will help us once we reach Las Lunas." When they emerged from the bedroom, they found Isaac waiting in the main room. He had changed as well into a clean shirt and had trimmed his beard. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of them in his sister's old dresses, but he recovered quickly. "You look much refreshed," he said, gesturing to the table where Alina was setting out plates of food. "Please eat, you must be starving." The meal was simple beans, cornbread, and a stew with chunks of beef and vegetables, but to the hungry sisters it was a feast. As they ate, Isaac explained more about his ranch. "It's not large by New Mexico standards, just over 1,000 acres. I run about 300 head of cattle with Vicent's help. We sell primarily to the Army at Fort Craig and to the merchants in Socorro." "How long have you lived here?" Sarah asked. "Almost 5 years now. I came west from Tennessee after the war." He didn't specify which war, but Sophia assumed he meant the Civil War, though he seemed young to have fought in it. "My father left me some money and I wanted a fresh start." There was more to that story, Sophia thought, but she didn't press. They all had their secrets. "And you ladies," Isaac asked, "what brings you all the way from Boston to New Mexico territory?" Sophia hesitated, but Sarah answered readily. "Our parents died last winter influenza. Our uncle is our only remaining family. He owns a store in Las Lunas and wrote that we would be welcome there." "I'm sorry for your loss," Isaac said quietly. "Losing family is never easy." "No," Sophia agreed, studying him. There was genuine compassion in his eyes, and she felt her guard lowering slightly. "It isn't." After dinner, Isaac excused himself to check on the livestock, leaving the sisters with Alina, who insisted on showing them how to work the pump for water and where to find extra blankets. "The nights get cold even in summer," she explained. "And Isaac, he rises before the sun. If you need anything, my husband Vicent and I live in the small house beyond the barn." When they were finally alone in their borrowed bedroom, Sarah collapsed onto the bed with a sigh. "What would we have done without Mr. Hawkins finding us?" "Let's not think about that," Sophia said, sitting beside her. "We need to focus on getting to Uncle George as soon as possible. Do you think Mr. Hawkins will take us to Las Lunas?" "I don't know. It's a fair distance, and he has his ranch to tend." Sophia brushed her sister's hair back from her face. "Get some sleep. We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Sarah was asleep within minutes, but Sophia found herself lying awake, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional bark of the dog, and once, the haunting howl of a coyote. Despite her exhaustion, her mind raced with worry about their future and with questions about the man who had rescued them. Outside their window, she could see Isaac moving about the yard with a lantern, making a final check of his property before turning in. There was something reassuring about his methodical movements, about the way he seemed to care for his land and animals. Perhaps they had been fortunate after all. With that thought, Sophia finally drifted into sleep, her hand still clutching her mother's locket. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee brewing. Sophia woke to find Sarah already up and dressed, peering out the small window. "Everything looks different in the daylight," Sarah observed. "It's actually quite beautiful here." Sophia joined her at the window. The ranch was indeed impressive in the morning light, the buildings neat and well maintained, the corral holding several horses, and beyond, the rangeland stretching toward mountains in the distance. They found Isaac at the kitchen table, studying what appeared to be ledgers. He rose when they entered, looking slightly embarrassed to be caught at his paperwork. "Good morning," he greeted them. "I hope you slept well." "Very well, thank you," Sophia replied, suddenly conscious of how the borrowed dress hung loosely on her frame. "We're grateful for your hospitality." Isaac gestured to the stove where a pot of coffee sat warming. "Please help yourselves. Alina has made breakfast. She'll be back shortly. She's just taken food to Vicent." As they ate the simple breakfast of eggs, tortillas, and more beans, Isaac explained his plans for the day. "I need to ride out and check on the herd. We've had some trouble with rustlers lately. But I thought perhaps tomorrow I could take you into Socorro. It's the nearest town of any size, about 15 miles from here. You could send a telegram to your uncle from there, let him know what's happened." "That would be most helpful," Sophia said, "and perhaps we could arrange for transportation to Las Lunas from there." The stage runs twice a week, Isaac nodded. Though, he hesitated, I'd be happy to take you to Las Lunas myself if you'd prefer. It would mean a few days away from the ranch, but Vicent can manage. Sarah brightened visibly at this offer, but Sophia was more cautious. That's very generous, but we wouldn't want to impose further. It's no imposition, Isaac insisted. I have business in that direction anyway. This last part seemed added as an afterthought, and Sophia wondered if it was true. Before she could respond, the door opened and Vicent entered, his expression grim. Patron, there is trouble. 2 of the yearlings are missing from the north pasture. I found tracks. Isaac's demeanor changed instantly, the gentle host replaced by a hardened rancher. The same as before, Vicent nodded. I think so, 3 men heading east. Isaac stood, all thoughts of Sakuro apparently forgotten. I'll need to go after them right away. We'll be fine here, Sophia assured him, seeing his conflicted expression. Please don't let our presence disrupt your work. Isaac nodded gratefully. Elena will see to anything you need. I should be back by nightfall. He paused at the door, looking back at them. Please make yourselves at home. You're welcome here for as long as you need. After he left, Sarah turned to Sophia with bright eyes. He's quite handsome, isn't he, Sarah? Sophia scolded, though she couldn't entirely disagree. There was something compelling about Isaac Hawkins, a quiet strength and dignity that she found herself admiring. Well, he is, Sarah persisted, and kind too, not at all like the rough men father always warned us about. We barely know him, Sophia reminded her, and our plan hasn't changed. We need to get to Uncle George as soon as possible. But as the day progressed, Sophia found herself wondering what life might be like in a place like this. Elena showed them around the property, explaining the workings of the ranch. There was a small vegetable garden behind the house that provided much of their food, a chicken coop that supplied eggs, and a root cellar where preserves and other staples were stored. Isaac, he is good provider, Elena said proudly. The ranch, it grows every year. Soon he will need more help. Has he never married? Sarah asked, earning another disapproving look from Sophia. Elena's expression grew sad. There was a girl in the beginning, but she did not like the life here, too hard, too lonely. She went back east. She patted Sarah's hand, but that was long ago. Now he works, always works. No time for courting. By late afternoon, both sisters had found ways to make themselves useful, Sarah helping Elena with mending, while Sophia, who had always been more practical, assisted with the garden and chicken coop. It felt good to have purpose after the shock and helplessness of the previous day. As the sun began its descent, Sophia found herself watching the horizon, looking for signs of Isaac's return. She told herself it was merely concern for their host, nothing more. It was well after dark when they heard the sound of horses approaching. Sarah had already retired to their room, but Sophia sat at the table with Elena, drinking tea and listening to stories of the woman's childhood in Mexico. The door opened, and Isaac entered, looking exhausted. There was dust covering his clothes and a small cut on his cheek that hadn't been there that morning. You found the rustlers? Vicent asked, appearing from the back of the house. Isaac nodded grimly. 2 of them, the Jenkins brothers, they won't be stealing cattle anymore. There was something in his tone that made Sophia shiver. She had no illusions about the violence of frontier justice, but it was another thing entirely to be confronted with it in the person of their host. Are you hurt? Elena asked, already moving to get water and bandages. Just scrapes, Isaac assured her, finally noticing Sophia's presence. Miss Garland, you didn't need to wait up. I wanted to make sure you returned safely, she said, rising from the table. And please call me Sophia. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Sophia, then. I apologize for leaving so abruptly this morning. There's no need to apologize. This is your livelihood. Elena returned with water and clean cloths, insisting on tending to the cut on Isaac's face despite his protests. As she worked, Sophia found herself studying him more closely, the set of his jaw, the calluses on his hands, the way he winced slightly when Elena touched a particularly tender spot. Did you recover your cattle? She asked. One of them. The other was already butchered. His eyes met hers and she saw something there, a hardness, certainly, but also regret. This is a harsh land, Sophia. It requires harsh measures sometimes. I understand, she said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. My father always said a man must protect what's his. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was. She hesitated, then asked, what about the third man? Vicent mentioned 3 sets of tracks. Isaac's expression darkened, got away. For now, when Alina had finished, Isaac walked Sophia to the door of the bedroom she shared with Sarah. I'm sorry our trip to Sakaro must be delayed, perhaps the day after tomorrow if there's no further trouble. There's no rush, Sophia found herself saying. We're safe here and that's what matters. He studied her face in the dim lamplight. You're not what I expected, he said finally. Oh. And what did you expect from a Boston lady stranded in the wilderness? A smile touched his lips. More complaints, more helplessness, I suppose. I hope we haven't disappointed you, she said, returning his smile, quite the contrary. His gaze held hers for a moment longer than was proper, and Sophia felt a warmth creeping into her cheeks. Good night, Sophia. Good night, Isaac. Inside the bedroom, Sarah was still awake, her eyes bright with curiosity. I heard horses. Is Mr. Hawkins back? Yes, and he's fine, Sophia said, hoping the dim light concealed her flushed face. Go to sleep, Sarah. It's late. But as she lay in bed beside her sister, Sophia found sleep elusive. Her thoughts kept returning to Isaac, to the complexity she sensed beneath his calm exterior, and to the way her heart had quickened when he'd looked at her. This is foolishness, she told herself firmly. We've known him barely a day. But even as she tried to dismiss these feelings, she knew something had changed. The disaster that had befallen them might have led to something unexpected, something that both thrilled and frightened her. The next day dawned clear and hot, with no sign of the troubles that had plagued the previous day. Isaac was already gone when the sisters awoke, but Alina informed them he was just checking the herd and would be back by mid-morning. He says to tell you he is still planning for Sakaro tomorrow, if that suits you, she added, setting fresh tortillas on the table. That would be wonderful, Sophia replied, trying to ignore the flutter of disappointment that their time at the ranch was coming to an end. As promised, Isaac returned mid-morning, and to Sophia's surprise, he had a proposal. I thought perhaps you might like to see more of the ranch, he suggested as they stood in the yard. It's a fine day for riding, and there's a spot not far from here, a small lake fed by a spring that's quite pleasant. Sarah clapped her hands in delight. Oh, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it, Sophia? Sophia hesitated. She was a competent rider. Their father had insisted both his daughters learn, but the prospect of spending hours alone with Isaac stirred both interest and apprehension. I'm not sure. Alina has packed a lunch, Isaac added, gesturing to the saddlebags already prepared. And I promise to have you back well before dark. Please, Sophia, Sarah pleaded. We've been cooped up for so long with the journey. Faced with her sister's enthusiasm and Isaac's expectant gaze, Sophia relented. Very well, a ride would be nice. Isaac's smile was reward enough for her acquiescence. Excellent, I'll saddle the horses. Within the hour, they were riding across the ranch lands, Isaac on his own mount, a powerful buckskin gelding, while Sophia rode a gentle bay mare and Sarah a placid dun. The land around them was surprisingly varied open grassland where cattle grazed, stands of juniper and piñon pine, and dramatic rock formations rising from the earth. It's beautiful, Sarah said, gazing around in wonder. I never imagined the desert could be so colorful. This isn't true desert, Isaac explained. We're at higher elevation here, about 6,000 feet. That's why the nights are cool even in summer. The real desert is further south and west. As they rode, Isaac pointed out landmarks and told them stories about the land, about the Apache who had once lived there, about the Spanish settlers who had come centuries before, and about his own efforts to build something lasting in this wild country. What made you choose this particular place? Sophia asked as they paused to rest the horses in the shade of a large cottonwood tree. Isaac was silent for a moment, his eyes scanning the horizon. I was riding through, headed nowhere in particular, when I saw this valley. There was something about it. He gestured at the landscape around them. I knew this was where I was meant to be. I bought the land from an old Spanish family who had fallen on hard times, and I've been adding to it ever since." "You built all this yourself?" Sarah asked, impressed. "With help," Isaac amended. "Vicent and Alina came with the original property. They've been here for generations. They taught me everything I know about ranching in this country." By early afternoon, they reached the lake Isaac had mentioned, a small but beautiful body of water, surrounded by cottonwoods and willows, with a grassy bank perfect for their picnic. The water was clear and cool, fed by a spring that bubbled up from underground. "It's like a little paradise," Sarah exclaimed, immediately removing her shoes to wade at the edge. Isaac spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked the food Alina had prepared: cold chicken, corn tortillas, beans, and a jar of preserved peaches for dessert. As they ate, Sarah peppered him with questions about life on the ranch, which he answered with patience and good humor. Sophia found herself watching the easy interaction between them, struck by how natural it all seemed, as if they were old friends rather than strangers thrown together by circumstance. There was something about Isaac Hawkins that inspired trust, despite his admission of the violence he dealt to the cattle thieves. After they had eaten, Sarah wandered off to explore the shoreline, leaving Sophia and Isaac alone on the blanket. "Your sister is a delightful young woman," Isaac observed, watching as Sarah bent to examine something at the water's edge. "She is," Sophia agreed. "Sometimes I worry she's too trusting, too open with her heart. Our parents protected her more than they did me." "And you?" Isaac turned his gaze to her. "Were you not protected?" Sophia smiled wryly. "I was the practical one, the one who helped father with his accounts, the one mother depended on. Sarah was the dreamer. And yet here you both are, embarking on a new life thousands of miles from home." "That takes courage, or desperation," Sophia countered. "We had few options after our parents died. Boston has little use for unmarried women without fortune." Isaac studied her face. "I doubt you would have come if you didn't have some of your sister's spirit of adventure in you as well." Before Sophia could respond, Sarah called out from the shore, holding up a prettily colored stone she had found. The moment of intimacy was broken, but Sophia found herself wondering what Isaac might have said next and what she might have replied. The sun was beginning its westward descent when they began the journey back to the ranch. Sarah rode ahead, still excited by their outing, while Sophia and Isaac followed at a more leisurely pace. "Thank you for today," Sophia said quietly. "It's been a welcome distraction from our troubles." "It was my pleasure," Isaac replied. "I don't often have company for these rides. Don't you get lonely out here?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Isaac considered this, his gaze on the horizon. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I've grown accustomed to solitude. And there's always work to be done." Alina mentioned there was someone once. A shadow crossed his face. "Yes, a long time ago, Elizabeth. She came out from St. Louis full of romantic notions about the West. The reality was not what she expected." "I'm sorry," Sophia said, genuinely meaning it. Isaac shrugged. "It was for the best. She wouldn't have been happy here, and I couldn't leave this land. It gets in your blood." Sophia looked around at the landscape, so different from the crowded streets and manicured gardens of Boston, and found herself understanding what he meant. There was a raw beauty here, a sense of possibility and freedom that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I think I can see why you love it," she said softly. His eyes met hers, surprise and pleasure evident in his expression. "Most Easterners never do. Perhaps I'm not like most Easterners." "No," he agreed, his gaze lingering on her face. "You certainly are not." The moment was interrupted by Sarah calling back to them about a jackrabbit she had spotted. But something had shifted between Sophia and Isaac. A connection, tentative but undeniable, had formed. That evening, after Sarah had gone to bed, Sophia found herself sitting on the small porch of the ranch house, watching the stars. They seemed impossibly bright and numerous here, unlike the dim specks visible through Boston's coal smoke. The sound of footsteps alerted her to Isaac's presence before she saw him. He stood in the doorway, hesitating. "May I join you?" "Of course," she replied, moving slightly to make room on the bench. He sat beside her, leaving a proper distance between them, and for a few minutes they simply watched the night sky in companionable silence. "Are you still planning to take us to Sakura tomorrow?" Sophia asked finally. "If you wish," Isaac said. "Though." He paused, then continued with careful neutrality. "There's no need to rush your departure if you'd prefer to rest a little longer after your ordeal." Sophia considered this. The practical course would be to continue to their uncle as soon as possible. But she couldn't deny the appeal of spending more time here, of learning more about Isaac Hawkins and his world. "Perhaps another day or two wouldn't hurt," she said slowly. "Sarah is still recovering from the shock, I think." "Of course," Isaac nodded, though she thought she detected relief in his voice. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need." They fell silent again, but it was a comfortable silence filled with unspoken possibilities. When Sophia finally rose to go inside, Isaac remained on the porch, his gaze now turned to the distant mountains. "Good night, Isaac," she said softly. "Good night, Sophia," he replied, his eyes meeting hers briefly. "Sleep well." As she lay beside her sleeping sister that night, Sophia tried to make sense of her conflicting emotions. They had known Isaac Hawkins for only 2 days, and yet she felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. Was it merely gratitude for his rescue, or something more substantial? And what of their plans? Their uncle was expecting them, and they had no right to impose on Isaac's hospitality indefinitely. Yet the thought of leaving filled her with an unexpected sense of loss. "It's just the adventure of it all," she told herself firmly. Any woman would be affected by such circumstances, but even as she tried to rationalize her feelings, she knew there was more to it than that. Isaac Hawkins had awakened something in her, a longing she hadn't known she possessed for a different kind of life than the one she had always imagined. With these thoughts swirling in her mind, Sophia finally drifted into sleep, dreaming of open skies and a man with eyes the color of the New Mexico horizon. The next morning brought a change of plans. Isaac announced at breakfast that Vicent had spotted signs of more rustlers near the eastern boundary of the ranch. "I'm afraid Sakura will have to wait another day," he told the sisters apologetically. "I need to ride out and check the herd." "We understand," Sophia assured him, ignoring Sarah's disappointed look. "Your livelihood comes first." "I hate to leave you here with nothing to do," Isaac said, his brow furrowed. "Oh, we can find ways to be useful," Sophia replied. "Perhaps Alina would appreciate some help around the house." Isaac seemed relieved by her understanding. "I should be back by evening. Tomorrow, I promise, we'll make the trip to Sakura." After he had gone, Sarah turned to Sophia with a sly smile. "You didn't seem too disappointed about the delay." "Don't be ridiculous," Sophia said, feeling her cheeks warm. "It's only sensible to be flexible under the circumstances." Sarah just grinned, clearly unconvinced. "I saw the way he looks at you, you know, and the way you look at him when you think no one is watching." Sarah Garland. "That's quite enough." But Sophia couldn't maintain her stern expression for long. "Is it really that obvious? Only to someone who knows you as well as I do," Sarah assured her, linking her arm through her sister's. "And I think it's wonderful. Isaac is a good man, anyone can see that." "It doesn't matter," Sophia sighed. "We'll be leaving soon, continuing on to Uncle George as planned." "Must we?" Sarah asked, surprising her. "I mean, of course we should let Uncle know we're safe, but I like it here, Sophia, and I think you do too." Sophia pulled away, suddenly needing to create some distance. "We can't just invite ourselves to stay permanently, Sarah. That would be presumptuous and inappropriate. But if Isaac were to invite us—" "Sarah, please, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We barely know the man." But as the day progressed, Sophia found herself wondering about the possibility Sarah had raised. What if they didn't continue to Las Lunas? What if they stayed? She tried to push such thoughts aside as she helped Alina with the household chores, but they persisted. By late afternoon, she needed time alone to clear her head, so she told Alina she was going for a short walk. "Do not go far," the older woman warned. "It is easy to get lost if you do not know the land." Sophia promised to stay within sight of the ranch buildings and set out toward a small rise that offered a view of the surrounding countryside. The air was warm but not unpleasant, scented with sage and juniper. As she walked, she tried to imagine what it would be like to call this place home. In Boston, her future had seemed set. She would either find a suitable husband or resign herself to spinsterhood, perhaps working as a companion to a wealthy relation. Here, the possibilities seemed endless and undefined, both terrifying and liberating. She reached the top of the rise and turned to look back at the ranch. From this vantage point, she could see the entire layout of the buildings, the corral where several horses dozed in the afternoon sun, and beyond, the vast rangeland that comprised Isaac's domain. It was modest by the standards of some ranches she had heard about, but it was impressive nonetheless, a testament to one man's vision and hard work. A movement caught her eye, a rider approaching from the east, but not on the trail Isaac had taken that morning. She watched, curious, as the figure drew nearer to the ranch. Something about the rider's posture seemed furtive, cautious. Instinctively, Sophia began making her way back toward the house, quickening her pace as she saw the rider dismount and tie his horse behind one of the outbuildings rather than approaching the main house directly. This wasn't a social call or a neighbor dropping by. She was still a good distance away when she saw the man, for she could now see it was indeed a man, wearing dusty clothes and a bandana that partially obscured his face, slip into the barn. Alarm rose within her. Where were Vicent and Alina? Were they aware of this intruder? Moving as quietly as possible, Sophia approached the main house, relieved to see Alina working in the garden at the back. Sarah was nowhere in sight, probably inside, taking the nap she often enjoyed in the afternoon heat. "Alina," Sophia called softly, not wanting her voice to carry. "There's a stranger in the barn." The older woman straightened immediately, her expression alert. "What kind of stranger? I don't know. He came from the east and concealed his horse. He's acting suspiciously." Alina muttered something in Spanish that Sophia didn't catch, then called out, "Vicent, ven aquí." Her husband appeared from around the corner of the house, a hoe in his hand. Alina rapidly explained the situation in Spanish, and Vicent's expression hardened. "Inside," he ordered the women. "Lock the door. I will see who this is." "Shouldn't we get help?" Sophia asked, thinking of how far away Isaac was. "No time," Vicent said grimly, already heading toward the shed where Sophia knew he kept a rifle. "Go inside, señorita, now." Sophia grabbed Alina's arm and hurried toward the house. They were halfway to the door when a shot rang out, followed by a cry of pain. Sophia turned to see Vicent stumbling, clutching his leg, while the stranger emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. Inside. Alina cried, pushing Sophia toward the door. "Get Sarah, the rifle by the fireplace." Sophia didn't hesitate. She burst through the door, calling for her sister. Sarah appeared in the bedroom doorway, her expression confused and frightened. "What's happening?" "Trouble," Sophia said, moving swiftly to the fireplace where Isaac's rifle hung. She had never fired such a weapon, but her father had taught her the basics of firearms. "Stay inside and keep away from the windows." Before Sarah could protest, Sophia had checked that the rifle was loaded and moved back to the door. Through the window, she could see Vicent on the ground, Alina kneeling beside him. The stranger was approaching them, rifle still trained on Vicent. Sophia's heart pounded in her ears as she eased the door open. She had no clear plan beyond creating a distraction that might allow Alina to get Vicent to safety. "That's far enough," she called, stepping onto the porch with the rifle raised. Her voice shook slightly, but her hands were steady. The man turned, surprise evident even with the bandana covering most of his face. His eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of her with the rifle. "Well, well," he drawled. "What have we here? Another of Hawkins' strays?" "Leave now," Sophia commanded, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Before someone gets hurt," the man laughed, a harsh sound that made Sophia's skin crawl. "Someone already got hurt, darlin', and I ain't leaving empty-handed." He gestured toward the barn with his chin. "Hawkins owes me. I'm just collecting what's due." "Mr. Hawkins owes you nothing," Alina spat from where she knelt beside Vicent. "You are a thief, Delaney, nothing more." So this was the third rustler who had escaped, the one Isaac had mentioned. Sophia's grip on the rifle tightened. "I suggest you leave before Mr. Hawkins returns," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray the fact that Isaac was unlikely to be back for hours yet. Delaney seemed to consider this, his gaze moving from Sophia to Alina and back again. "He ain't here, is he?" "Off chasing shadows on the East Range, I reckon, which gives me plenty of time to take what I came for and maybe a little extra." His leering gaze made Sophia's skin crawl, but she held her ground. "I know how to use this," she warned, raising the rifle slightly. "Do you now?" Delaney took a step toward her. "Somehow I doubt that, city girl." What happened next occurred so quickly that Sophia would later have trouble recalling the exact sequence of events. Delaney lunged forward, apparently believing her threat to be empty. Acting on instinct, Sophia squeezed the trigger. The rifle's recoil slammed into her shoulder painfully, and the sound was deafening. She had aimed high, hoping only to frighten him, but to her horror, Delaney staggered back with a cry of pain, clutching his arm. "You shot me," he snarled, his expression changing from surprise to rage. "You'll pay for that, you." He never finished his threat. Another shot rang out, this one not from Sophia's rifle. Delaney jerked, then crumpled to the ground. Behind him, mounted on his buckskin gelding, was Isaac, his own rifle still raised. For a moment, no one moved. Then Isaac was dismounting, rushing first to Vicent, who waved him toward Delaney instead. "I am fine, patron," the older man insisted, though his face was pale with pain. "Just a flesh wound. Check if he lives." Isaac knelt beside the fallen rustler, checking for signs of life. After a moment, he looked up at Sophia, his expression grim. "He's alive, shoulder wound." Relief washed over Sophia, making her knees weak. She hadn't killed a man. The rifle suddenly felt impossibly heavy in her hands. Isaac rose and came to her, gently taking the weapon. "You're safe now," he said softly, his eyes searching her face. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Behind Isaac, Sarah had emerged from the house and was now helping Alina tend to Vicent's leg. "How did you know?" Sophia finally managed to ask. "How did you know to come back?" "I didn't," Isaac admitted. "I finished my checks earlier than expected and was on my way home when I heard the shots." His expression darkened. "I should never have left you all unprotected. I knew Delaney was still out there somewhere." "We managed," Sophia said, finding her voice again. "Vicent tried to warn us, and Alina, she was so brave." Isaac's gaze softened as he looked at her. "So were you. That was a clean shot, especially for someone I'm guessing hasn't had much practice with a rifle." "I aimed high," she confessed. "I didn't want to kill him, I just wanted to scare him off." "You did more than that. You bought enough time for me to get here." His hand touched her arm briefly, a gesture of comfort and something more. "Thank you, Sophia, for protecting my home and my people." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Vicent's wound was cleaned and bandaged thankfully. As he had said, it was only a flesh wound. Delaney, once his own wound was roughly treated, was tied securely and locked in a storage shed until Isaac could take him to the authorities in Socorro. By nightfall, a semblance of normalcy had returned to the ranch. Alina had prepared a simple supper which they ate quietly, the events of the day still weighing heavily on all of them. After the meal, Isaac asked Sophia to join him on the porch. The night was clear, stars blazing overhead with a cool breeze that carried the scent of sage. "I've been thinking," Isaac said after they had stood in silence for a few moments. "About your journey to Las Lunas." Sophia's heart sank. Of course, he would want them to continue on their way as soon as possible after the day's violence. They had brought danger to his doorstep. "I understand," she said quickly. "We've imposed on your hospitality long enough. After today, no," he interrupted, turning to face her directly. "That's not what I meant at all." He took a deep breath as if gathering his courage. "I was thinking that perhaps you might consider staying here at the ranch." Sophia stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Staying?" "Yes." His eyes held hers, earnest and hopeful. "Both you and Sarah, if you wish. There's plenty of work for willing hands and, well, I've grown accustomed to having you here." Sophia's mind raced. Was this merely an offer of employment or something more? "As what exactly?" she asked cautiously. Isaac looked away, suddenly uncertain. "As whatever you wish to be," he said finally. Friends, helpers, partners, I don't presume to dictate terms. I only know that the thought of you leaving troubles me more than it should after such a short acquaintance. Sophia felt a flutter of hope in her chest. It troubles me as well, she admitted softly, his gaze returned to her face, searching. Does it? Yes. She took a step closer to him, emboldened by the events of the day and the honesty of his words. I've been thinking about what it might be like to stay here, to make a life in this place. And, he prompted when she paused, and I find the prospect not unappealing. It was a careful answer befitting the short duration of their acquaintance, but the smile that spread across Isaac's face told her he understood the significance of her words. Then stay, he said simply. At least for a time, get to know the land and… He hesitated, then continued with careful restraint, and me. If you find it's not what you want, I'll personally escort you to your uncle in Las Lunas. No obligation. Sophia considered his offer. It was unorthodox, to be sure. What would people say about two unmarried women living on a ranch with a bachelor? But then, this was the frontier. Conventional rules didn't always apply here. We should still send word to our uncle, she said finally. He's expecting us and we wouldn't want him to worry. Of course, Isaac agreed readily. We'll go to Socorro tomorrow as planned. You can send a telegram and, if you wish, a letter explaining your decision to delay your arrival. And Sarah, Sophia asked. What would she do here? Isaac smiled. From what I've seen, your sister has a natural affinity with animals. The horses respond well to her. She could help with them or with the garden or learn ranching skills if she's interested. There's no shortage of work, but it would be her choice. And me. The question was softer, more personal. Isaac's expression grew serious. You, Sophia Garland, could do whatever you set your mind to. I've watched you these past days. You're practical, resourceful, and brave. Those qualities are worth their weight in gold out here. His praise warmed her, but she needed more clarity. Is this offer of employment, Mr. Hawkins, or are you suggesting something else? For a moment, Isaac seemed taken aback by her directness. Then he smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'm suggesting a beginning, he said. Where it leads, that would be for us to discover together, if you're willing. Sophia took a deep breath, weighing her options. The sensible course would be to continue to Las Lunas as planned, to the safety and security of her uncle's home. But when she looked at Isaac, at the hope and warmth in his eyes, sensibility seemed a poor substitute for possibility. I'll need to discuss it with Sarah, she said finally. This affects her future as well. Of course, Isaac nodded. Take all the time you need. But even as she spoke, Sophia knew what her sister would say. Sarah had already made her preference clear, and in her heart, Sophia had already made her decision as well. Later that night, as predicted, Sarah was ecstatic about Isaac's offer. Oh, Sophia, it's perfect. She exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement. I knew you were falling in love with him. Sarah, Sophia scolded, though without much conviction. He's offered us a place to stay while we decide what we want, nothing more. For now, Sarah said with a knowing smile. But I've seen the way he looks at you, and the way you look at him when you think no one is watching. Sophia couldn't deny it any longer, not even to herself. In the span of a few days, Isaac Hawkins had come to mean more to her than she would have thought possible. His quiet strength, his kindness, his dedication to his land and people, all of it had touched something deep within her. Even if there might be feelings, she said carefully, it's too soon to know if they're real or lasting. We've been through a traumatic experience together. That can create a false sense of connection. Sarah rolled her eyes. Must you always be so practical? Sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even when the head is still trying to figure it all out. As Sophia lay awake that night, she pondered her sister's words. Was she overthinking this? Was she letting fear of the unknown hold her back from embracing a new possibility? By morning, she had made up her mind. They would accept Isaac's offer to stay temporarily and send word to their uncle explaining the situation. Time would tell if this newfound connection with Isaac was merely a product of extraordinary circumstances or the beginning of something more profound. When she shared their decision with Isaac over breakfast, his relief was palpable. I'm glad, he said simply, but the warmth in his eyes spoke volumes. We'll still need to go to Socorro, Sophia reminded him. To send that telegram to Uncle George. And to take Delaney to the sheriff, Isaac added grimly. We'll leave within the hour. The journey to Socorro was unlike anything the sisters had experienced. The small town bustled with activity, miners, ranchers, merchants, and families all going about their business. The buildings were a mix of adobe and wood, most single-story, with the exception of the two-story hotel that dominated the main street. It's so different from Boston, Sarah marveled as Isaac helped them down from the wagon. He had insisted they take the wagon rather than ride, as it would be more comfortable for the journey and allow them to bring Delaney, securely bound and sullen, to face justice. Wait here, Isaac said, after ensuring they were comfortably seated on a bench outside the telegraph office. I'll take Delaney to the sheriff and be back directly. As they waited, Sophia watched the people passing by, women in practical frontier dress, cowboys with jangling spurs, Mexican laborers speaking rapid Spanish, even a few Apache, their dignity intact despite their altered circumstances. It's like a different world, she murmured to Sarah. But an exciting one, her sister replied. I think we could be happy here, Sophia, truly happy. Before Sophia could respond, Isaac returned, looking satisfied. Delaney will face a judge next week. He won't be troubling us again anytime soon. They entered the telegraph office, where Sophia composed a carefully worded message to their uncle, explaining that they had suffered a setback in their journey but had found safe haven with a reputable rancher. She promised a more detailed letter would follow and assured him they were well and would visit as soon as circumstances permitted. After sending the telegram, Isaac suggested they take the opportunity to purchase some necessities. Elena has done her best to provide for you, but I'm sure there are things you need that we don't have at the ranch. The general store was a treasure trove of goods, from practical items like fabric and sewing notions to small luxuries like peppermint sticks and hair ribbons. Isaac insisted on paying for everything, waving away Sophia's protests. Consider it part of my hospitality, he said firmly. Besides, you saved my ranch from Delaney yesterday. This is the least I can do. As they walked back to the wagon with their purchases, a well-dressed woman approached them, curiosity evident in her expression. Isaac Hawkins, she greeted him. It's been an age since you've come to town. Mrs. Thornton, Isaac replied, tipping his hat. May I introduce Miss Sophia Garland and her sister, Miss Sarah Garland. Ladies, this is Mrs. Thornton, the wife of Socorro's banker. How do you do? Sophia said politely, immediately aware of the woman's assessing gaze. New to our little community, are you, Mrs. Thornton asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. And staying with Mr. Hawkins, I understand. The implication was clear, and Sophia felt her cheeks warm. Before she could respond, Isaac stepped in smoothly. The Garland sisters suffered a misfortune on their journey to Las Lunas. Their wagon burned, and I found them stranded. They're staying at my ranch until arrangements can be made for the continuation of their journey. How charitable of you, Mrs. Thornton replied, her tone suggesting she believed nothing of the sort. Well, if you ladies need anything, the church ladies' auxiliary meets on Wednesdays. We're always welcoming to newcomers. With that, she departed, but not before giving Sophia a look that spoke volumes about her assumptions. I'm sorry about that, Isaac said quietly as they continued to the wagon. Small towns can be judgmental, Sophia suggested. I was going to say interested in everyone's business, but yes, that too. He looked genuinely concerned. I didn't think about how your staying at the ranch might appear to others. Neither did I, Sophia admitted, but I'm not sure I care what Mrs. Thornton or anyone else thinks. Isaac's expression lightened at her words. Truly, truly, she confirmed. We're grown women who can make our own decisions, and we've decided to accept your hospitality regardless of what the gossips might say. The ride back to the ranch was filled with conversation about their plans. Isaac spoke of improvements he hoped to make, expanding the herd, adding to the house, perhaps planting an orchard where the land dipped toward the stream. The soil is good there, he explained. Apple trees would do well, and peaches. It would be nice to have fresh fruit instead of always relying on preserves. Sophia found herself caught up in his vision, offering suggestions and asking questions that revealed her practical nature. Sarah, for her part, was full of ideas about the horses and the possibility of raising chickens for eggs to sell in town. By the time they reached the ranch, it felt as though they had been planning this life together for years rather than hours. And when Isaac helped Sophia down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist just a moment longer than necessary, she knew that whatever happened next, she had made the right decision. The weeks that followed settled into a pleasant rhythm. Sophia learned the workings of the ranch, helping with accounts and record-keeping, areas where Isaac admitted he was less than meticulous. Sarah, as predicted, took to caring for the animals with enthusiasm, particularly the horses. She even began working with a spirited filly that Isaac had considered too wild to be properly trained. "She has a gift," Isaac commented to Sophia as they watched Sarah in the corral, gently coaxing the young horse to accept a saddle. "I've never seen anything like it." "She's always had a way with creatures," Sophia agreed. Even as a child, she could calm the most temperamental cat or dog. Their days were filled with hard work, but satisfying in its tangible results. Sophia found muscles she hadn't known she possessed aching pleasantly at day's end. Her hands, once soft and white, grew calloused and strong. Her face, protected from the sun by a wide-brimmed hat Alina had insisted she wear, nonetheless took on a healthy glow that had been absent in Boston's smoky air, and through it all, her bond with Isaac deepened. They often found themselves working side by side, checking the vegetable garden, mending fences, sorting through supplies. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, talking of their pasts and their hopes for the future. Isaac told her of his time in the army during the last years of the Civil War, though he had been little more than a boy then, and of his aimless wandering afterward, seeking purpose. "My father wanted me to take over his shipping business in Tennessee," he explained one night as they sat watching the stars. "But after what I saw in the war, I couldn't go back to that life. I needed open spaces, room to breathe." "And do you find it here?" Sophia asked. "What you were looking for," his gaze turned to her, warm in the lantern light. "I'm finding more than I ever expected," he said softly. Such moments between them grew more frequent, more charged with unspoken feelings. Yet Isaac never presumed, never pressed beyond the bounds of propriety. If his hand occasionally brushed hers as they walked, if his gaze sometimes lingered on her face when he thought she wasn't looking well, these were small indulgences that harmed no one. One evening, about a month after their arrival at the ranch, Isaac received an unexpected visitor. Sophia was helping Alina prepare supper when they heard the sound of a horse approaching. Isaac, who had been checking the tack in the barn, went out to meet the rider through the window. Sophia watched as a well-dressed man dismounted. There was something familiar about him, though she was certain they had never met. Isaac greeted him with a handshake that suggested acquaintance rather than friendship. When they entered the house, Isaac's expression was carefully neutral. "Sophia, Sarah," he said, "this is George Garland." "Your uncle?" Shock rendered Sophia momentarily speechless. Their uncle here, how had he found them? The telegram had been deliberately vague about their location. Uncle George was a man of about 50, with graying hair and features that reminded Sophia painfully of her father. His expression was stern as he surveyed the scene before him, his nieces in simple frontier clothing, clearly at home in this rustic setting. "When I received your telegram," he said without preamble, "I made inquiries. Socorro isn't such a large place that a Boston lady sending telegrams goes unnoticed. Mrs. Thornton," Sophia realized aloud, "the banker's wife must have spread word of their presence." "Indeed," Uncle George confirmed. "I set out as soon as I learned where you were." His gaze moved to Isaac. "I understand I have you to thank for assisting my nieces, Mr. Hawkins." "They've been no trouble," Isaac replied evenly. "In fact, they've become valuable members of the household." Uncle George's eyebrows rose at this. "Have they indeed, and what exactly are their duties in your household?" The implication was unmistakable, and Sophia saw Isaac's jaw tighten. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. Uncle George, while we appreciate your concern, there has been no impropriety here. Mr. Hawkins rescued us from certain death and has been nothing but a gentleman. We chose to stay and help on the ranch while we considered our options. Options? Her uncle echoed. Your option, my dear, was to come to Las Lunas as arranged. Your parents entrusted me with your care in the event of their deaths. We're not children, Uncle, Sarah said, joining the conversation. I'm 19 and Sophia is 23. We're capable of making our own decisions. Clearly not, he retorted, if those decisions include living unchaperoned with a man to whom you are not related. Elena, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. They are not unchaperoned, senor. My husband and I live here also. We have cared for them like daughters. Uncle George seemed momentarily taken aback by this intervention but recovered quickly. Nevertheless, this arrangement is unsuitable. I've come to take you both to Las Lunas where you belong. A heavy silence fell over the room. Sophia looked at Isaac, whose expression was carefully controlled, revealing nothing of his thoughts. Would he fight for them to stay, or would he accept their uncle's authority? Perhaps, Isaac said finally, we should allow Miss Sophia and Miss Sarah to have some time alone with their uncle. This is, after all, a family matter. With that, he excused himself, gesturing for Elena to follow. As they left, Sophia felt a chill of apprehension. Was Isaac giving up so easily? Once they were alone with their uncle, George Garland's manner softened somewhat. Girls, I understand this has been a difficult time for you. The loss of your parents, the journey west, and then the disaster with your wagon, it's no wonder you accepted the first safe harbor offered. But your place is with family. We've come to see this as home, Uncle, Sophia said quietly. These people as family. After a single month, he scoffed. Don't be ridiculous, Sophia. You've always been the sensible one. Surely you see how inappropriate this situation is. What I see, she replied, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil, is that for the first time in my life I'm doing work that matters. I'm making decisions that affect real outcomes. I'm not just existing in a drawing room waiting for life to happen to me. And you, Sarah. Uncle George turned to the younger sister. Has frontier life bewitched you as well? Sarah nodded, her expression earnest. I love it here, Uncle, the horses, the land, even the hard work. I feel useful, needed. Their uncle sighed heavily. I promised your father I would look after you. How can I do that if you're 30 miles away on a remote ranch? By trusting us, Sophia said gently. By accepting that we're adults who can choose our own paths. She hesitated, then added, we're not saying we'll never come to Las Lunas, only that we're not ready to leave here yet. For a long moment, George Garland studied his nieces, seeing perhaps for the first time that they were indeed women, not the little girls his brother had described in his letters. Finally, he nodded slowly. A compromise, then. Come to Las Lunas for a visit. Stay a week, see the home I've prepared for you. If after that time you still wish to return here, I won't stand in your way. Sophia and Sarah exchanged glances. It was a reasonable offer and more than they had hoped for given their uncle's initial attitude. We accept, Sophia said. When would you like us to visit? I had hoped to take you back with me today, he admitted. But I can see that would be disruptive. Shall we say next week? I'll send a wagon for you. After their uncle had gone, promising to return in 7 days' time, Sophia went in search of Isaac. She found him in the barn, methodically brushing down his horse, his movements betraying the tension he otherwise concealed. Isaac, she called softly. He turned, his expression guarded. I assume your uncle is taking you to Las Lunas. Not today, she replied, moving closer. He's invited us to visit next week, to stay for a while and see his home. After that, it will be our choice whether to stay there or return here. Relief washed over Isaac's features. And what choice do you think you'll make? Sophia took a deep breath. I can only speak for myself, but I've found something here I never expected. She met his gaze directly. Something I'm not ready to give up. Isaac set down the brush and moved toward her, stopping just short of reaching out. Sophia, he said, his voice low and intense, I need to know. Is it just the ranch, the life here that you've grown attached to, or is it? He hesitated, then continued, is it me as well? The vulnerability in his question touched her deeply. This strong, capable man who had built a life from nothing in this harsh land was as uncertain of her feelings as she sometimes was of his. "It's both," she admitted softly. "The ranch, this life, I've come to love it all, but without you, Isaac, without you, it wouldn't mean nearly as much." He closed the distance between them then, taking her hands in his. "I've been telling myself it was too soon," he said, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms, "that you needed time to adjust, to be sure. That I had no right to ask for more than your friendship when you were dependent on my hospitality." "Ask now," Sophia whispered, her heart pounding. Isaac's eyes searched hers, hope and trepidation mingling in their blue depths. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as my guest or my helper, but as my partner, in all things. Are you asking me to marry you, Isaac Hawkins?" The directness of her question surprised even her, but these weeks in the West had changed her. Here, plain speaking was valued over social niceties. A smile spread across his face, not the careful, reserved smile she was accustomed to, but one of pure joy. "Yes, Sophia Garland, I believe I am, though I had planned something more romantic than a proposal in a barn with the smell of horses all around us." Sophia laughed, a sound of such happiness that it seemed to fill the space around them. "I can't think of anything more fitting," she told him. "This is our life, horses and hard work and simple joys. It's everything I never knew I wanted." Isaac's hands moved to cup her face, gentle despite their strength. "Is that a yes, then?" "It's a yes," she confirmed, her own hands coming to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. "Yes, I will stay. Yes, I will be your partner. Yes, I will marry you." His kiss, when it came, was tender yet passionate, a promise of all they might be together. Sophia returned it with equal fervor, all her doubts and hesitations falling away in the certainty of this moment. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "What about Sarah?" he asked. "And your uncle?" "Sarah loves it here as much as I do," Sophia assured him. "As for Uncle George, I think he'll come to understand in time. He wants us to be happy and secure. Once he sees that we are both here with you, he'll accept our decision." The week before their visit to Las Lunas passed in a blur of activity and planning. Isaac insisted on accompanying them, partly as a courtesy to their uncle and partly, Sophia suspected, to ensure they returned to the ranch afterward. "He's afraid we'll be persuaded to stay," she told Sarah one night as they prepared for bed. "Especially you," Sarah laughed. "As if I could be happy in town after all this," she gestured around them at the simple room that had become their own. "Besides, I have plans for that filly. By spring, she'll be the finest cutting horse in the territory." When the day came for their departure, Alina packed a basket of food for the journey and embraced each of them as if they were indeed her daughters. "You come back soon," she instructed. "The house is too quiet without you." Vicent, his leg healed but still favoring it slightly, helped load their small travel bags into the wagon. "The cattle will be waiting," he told Isaac with a wink, "and the fences still need mending on the North Range." The journey to Las Lunas took most of the day, with Isaac pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the area's history. By the time they arrived, Sophia had a deeper appreciation for the land that was becoming her home. Uncle George's house was larger and more refined than she had expected, a proper adobe structure with glass windows, a tiled roof, and a courtyard featuring a small fountain. Inside, the furnishings were a mix of Spanish colonial and American styles, creating an elegant but comfortable atmosphere. "This is beautiful, Uncle," Sophia said sincerely as he showed them around. "You've made a lovely home here." "It's been waiting for you girls," he replied, his expression softening as he watched their reactions. "I always hoped to have family here with me." Over the next few days, George Garland did his best to show his nieces the advantages of life in Las Lunas. He introduced them to the prominent families in town, took them to the small but growing library he had helped establish, and showed them the store he owned, which supplied goods to both the townspeople and the surrounding ranches. "You could help me run it," he told Sophia. "With your head for figures and organization, we could expand, perhaps open a second location in Socorro." It was a tempting offer in many ways: a comfortable life, respectable work, and the security of family. But when Sophia looked at Isaac, who had been patient and respectful throughout their visit, she knew where her heart truly lay. On their third day in Las Lunas, while Sarah was occupied with inspecting their uncle's small stable, Sophia asked Isaac to walk with her in the courtyard. The afternoon sun cast dappled shadows through the grapevines that covered one wall, creating a private, peaceful setting. "I've made my decision," she told him without preamble. "I want to return to the ranch with you as soon as our visit here is concluded." Relief and joy transformed Isaac's features. "You're certain your uncle's offer is generous?" "It is," she agreed. "And in another life I might have accepted gladly, but that's not the life I want anymore." She took his hands in hers. "I want our life, Isaac, the one we're building together." He drew her into his arms then, propriety be damned, and held her close. "I love you, Sophia Garland," he murmured against her hair. "I think I have since the moment I saw you standing beside that burned wagon, fierce despite your fear." "And I love you," she whispered back. "My cowboy who took in 2 stranded sisters and said, 'You're welcome here.'" That evening, over supper, Sophia and Isaac shared their news with Uncle George and Sarah. Sarah, of course, was delighted, rushing to embrace her sister with tears of joy in her eyes. Uncle George's reaction was more measured. He studied Isaac thoughtfully, then turned to Sophia. "You're certain this is what you want? You've known each other such a short time." "I've never been more certain of anything," Sophia assured him. "Isaac is a good man, Uncle. The kind of man Father would have approved of, honest, hardworking, and kind." After a long moment, George nodded slowly. "I can see that, and I can see that you love him." He turned to Isaac. "I may have misjudged you, Mr. Hawkins. For that, I apologize. If my niece has chosen you, then you must indeed be worthy of her regard." "I'll spend my life trying to be," Isaac promised solemnly. "And what of you, Sarah?" Uncle George asked, turning to his younger niece. "Will you stay at the ranch as well, at least until we can find a suitable match for you?" Sarah's expression turned mischievous. "Oh, I think I'll stay. Someone needs to make sure these 2 don't work too hard." Her face grew more serious. "But I hope you'll visit us often, Uncle. And perhaps we can come to Las Lunas for holidays and special occasions." This compromise seemed to please their uncle, who raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, then, and to family both by blood and by choice. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony in Soccero's small church. Elena had worked tirelessly to alter one of Isabel's old dresses for Sophia, a cream-colored gown with delicate embroidery that suited her perfectly. Sarah stood as her sister's attendant, radiant in a blue dress that matched her eyes, while Vicent stood proudly beside Isaac. Uncle George, true to his word, gave the bride away, having come to accept and even approve of the match after seeing how happy his niece was with her chosen husband. "Your parents would be proud," he told Sophia as he escorted her down the aisle. "You found your way in this wild land, just as they always believed you would." The celebration afterward was a blend of cultures: Mexican food prepared by Elena, American hymns played by the church organist, and Spanish dances taught by Vicent. The townspeople came out in force, curiosity about the Boston ladies who had chosen ranch life over civilization bringing even Mrs. Thornton to offer her congratulations. As the sun set on their wedding day, Isaac led Sophia away from the festivities to a quiet spot behind the church, where the desert stretched out before them, painted in shades of gold and purple by the fading light. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though I'll be happier still when we're home." Home. The word held such meaning now, not just a place, but a feeling, a belonging, a shared purpose with the man she loved. "We'll leave at first light tomorrow," Isaac promised. "Vicent and Elena are preparing a surprise for us." The surprise, as they discovered upon their return to the ranch the following day, was a transformation of the main house. Elena had reorganized the rooms, creating a proper bedroom for the newlyweds with a handmade quilt on the bed and wildflowers in a jar on the windowsill. Vicent had built new furniture, a larger table for family meals, a rocking chair for the porch, and a desk where Sophia could work on the ranch accounts. "It's perfect," Sophia whispered, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of these people who had become family in such a short time. "There's one more thing," Isaac said, taking her hand and leading her outside. Behind the barn, where the land sloped gently toward the creek, wooden stakes marked out a large rectangular area. "The new house," he explained, "bigger with proper windows and a kitchen Alina won't have to stoop in. I thought we could start building this fall, have it ready by spring." Sophia walked the perimeter, envisioning the home they would build together. "It's wonderful," she said, turning back to him with shining eyes. "Room to grow." Isaac's smile was tender as he drew her into his arms. "Room for a family," he agreed, his meaning clear. "A family," Sophia echoed, letting herself imagine children running across this land, learning to ride, helping with the ranch work. Their children, hers and Isaac's. "I'd like that, very much." The months that followed were filled with hard work and simple joys as they settled into married life. Sarah flourished, taking on more responsibilities with the horses and even beginning to accompany Isaac on some of his rounds checking the herd. Uncle George visited regularly, gradually becoming more comfortable with ranch life, even occasionally helping Vicent with repairs or joining Isaac to check the cattle. By winter, the framework of the new house was complete, and they worked whenever weather permitted to finish the walls and roof before the worst of the season set in. And if Sophia sometimes found herself tiring more easily than usual, if certain foods no longer appealed to her as they once had, well, she kept these observations to herself until she was certain. It was Christmas Eve when she finally shared her suspicion with Isaac. They were alone in their bedroom, the rest of the household having retired after a simple but festive dinner. "I have a gift for you," she said as they prepared for bed. "One that can't be wrapped." Isaac looked at her curiously. "What is it?" Sophia took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. "A child," she said softly. "Our child due in the summer." For a moment, Isaac seemed frozen, his eyes wide with wonder. Then, with a sound that was half laugh, half sob, he gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "A baby," he whispered against her hair. "Oh, Sophia, I never dared hope for such happiness." They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, sharing this moment of pure joy. Outside, the desert night was cold and clear, stars blazing in the dark sky. But inside, in the home they had made together, there was only warmth and love and the promise of a future brighter than either had ever imagined. "I love you, Isaac Hawkins," Sophia murmured, her heart full to overflowing. "Thank you for finding us that day. Thank you for saying you're welcome here." Isaac's kiss was tender, a promise renewed. "Best words I ever spoke," he said, "and truer now than ever." 5 years later, on a warm June evening, Sophia stood on the porch of their completed home, watching as Isaac taught their son, James, to ride his first pony. At 4, the boy was a miniature version of his father, with the same determined set to his jaw and the same gentle way with animals. Sarah, now married to a young rancher whose property adjoined theirs, sat beside Sophia, her own infant daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. The two sisters had built the lives they wanted, so different from what they had imagined that day their wagon burned in the desert. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if Isaac hadn't found us that day?" Sarah asked, watching her brother-in-law patiently guiding her nephew around the corral. Sophia shook her head. "No, some things are meant to be, Sarah. I believe Isaac would have found us somehow, somewhere. Our paths were destined to cross." As if sensing her gaze, Isaac looked up, his smile as warm and genuine as the day she had first seen it. He lifted James from the pony and set him on his shoulders, the boy's delighted laughter carrying across the yard as they headed toward the house. "Mama, did you see?" James called as they approached. "I rode all by myself, I saw," Sophia assured him, reaching up to ruffle his dark hair. "You're a natural, just like your father." Isaac set the boy down and moved to stand beside his wife, his arm slipping around her waist in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "He'll be out pacing me soon," he said with pride. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, Sophia leaned into her husband's embrace, contentment filling her heart. The wagon fire that had seemed such a disaster had led them here, to this life, this love, this family. It had been a beginning, not an end, the start of a journey more wonderful than she could have ever imagined. "Happy?" Isaac asked softly, echoing the question he had asked on their wedding day. "Completely," Sophia replied, lifting her face to his for a kiss that still held all the promise of their first. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the Hawkins family gathered on their porch, surrounded by the land they loved and the life they had built together, a life that had begun with two stranded sisters, a burning wagon and a cowboy who had opened his home and his heart with those simple, life-changing words, "You're welcome here."